An excerpt of The Tower of Cirith Ungol from Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. Read to you by Jaz Lakowski. His voice sounded thin and quavering in the cold, dark tower. The voice of a forlorn and weary hobbit that no listening orc could possibly mistake for the clear song of an elven lord. He murmured old childish tunes out of the Shire, and snatches of Mr. Bilbo's rhymes that came into his mind, like a fleeting glimpse of the country of his home. And then suddenly new strength rose in him, and his voice rang out, while words of his own came unbidden to fit the simple tune. In western lands beneath the sun, the flowers may rise in spring. The trees may bud, the waters run, the merry finches sing. Or there may be 'tis cloudless night, and swaying beaches bare, the elven stars as jewels white amid their branching hair. Though here at journey's end I lie, in darkness buried deep, beyond all towers strong and high, beyond all mountains steep, above all shadows rides the sun, and stars forever dwell. I will not say the day is done, nor bid the stars farewell. Beyond all towers strong and high, he began again, and then he stopped short. He thought he had heard a faint voice answering him, but now he could hear nothing. Yes, he could hear something, but not a voice. Footsteps were approaching. Now a door was being opened, quietly in the passage above. The hinges creaked. Sam crouched down listening. The door closed with a dull thud, then a snarling orc voice rang out. "Hola, you up there, you dunghill rat! Stop your squeaking or I'll come and deal with you, do you hear?" There was no answer. "All right," growled Snaga, "but I'll come and have a look at you all the same and see what you're up to." The hinges creaked again, and Sam, now peering over the corner of the passage threshold, saw a flicker of light in an open doorway, and the dim shape of an orc coming out. He seemed to be carrying a ladder. Suddenly, the answer dawned on Sam. The topmost chamber was reached by a trapdoor on the roof of the passage. Snaga thrust the ladder up, steadied it, and then clambered out of sight. Sam heard a bolt drawn back. Then he heard the hideous voice speaking again. "You lie quiet, or you'll pay for it. You've not got long to live in peace, I guess. But if you don't want the fun to begin right now, keep your trap shut, see? There's a reminder for you." There was a sound like a crack of a whip. At that, rage blazed in Sam's heart to a sudden fury. He sprang up, ran, and went up the ladder like a cat. His head came out in the middle of the roof of a large chamber. A red lamp hung in its roof. The westward window slit was high and dark. Somewhere something was lying on the floor by the wall under the window, but over it a black orc shape was straddled. It raised the whip a second time, but the blow never fell. With a cry, Sam leapt across the floor, sting in hand. The orc wheeled round, but before it could make a move, Sam slashed its whip hand from its arm. Howling with pain and fear, but desperate, the orc charged head down at him. Sam's next blow went wide, and thrown off his balance, he fell backwards, clutching at the orc as it fell over him. Before he could scramble up, he heard a cry and a thud. The orc in its wild haste had tripped on the ladder head and fallen through the open trap door. Sam gave no more thought to it. He ran to the figure huddled on the floor. It was Frodo. He was naked, lying as if in a swoon on a heap of filthy rags. His arm was flung up, shielding his head, and across his side there ran an ugly whip wheel. "Frodo! Mr. Frodo, my dear!" cried Sam, tears almost blinding him. "It's Sam! I've come!" He half lifted his master and hugged him to his breast. Frodo opened his eyes. "Am I still dreaming?" he muttered. but the other dreams were horrible." "You're not dreaming at all, master," said Sam. "It's real. It's me. I've come." "I can hardly believe it," said Frodo, clutching him. "There was an orc with a whip, and then it turns into Sam. Then I wasn't dreaming after all, when I heard that singing down below and I tried to answer. Was it you?" "It was indeed, Mr. Frodo. I'd given up hope almost. I couldn't find you." "Well, you have now, Sam. Dear Sam," said Frodo, and he lay back in Sam's gentle arms, closing his eyes like a child at rest when night fears are driven away by some loved voice or hand. Sam felt that he could sit like that in endless happiness, but it was not allowed. It was not enough to find his master. He had still to try and save him. He kissed Frodo's forehead. "Come, wake up, Mr. Frodo," he said, trying to sound as cheerful as he had when he drew back the curtains at Bag End on a summer's morning. Frodo sighed and sat up. "Where are we? How did I get here?" he asked. "There's no time for tales till we get somewhere else, Mr. Frodo," said Sam. "But you're in the top of that tower you and me saw from away down the tunnel before the orcs got you. How long ago that was, I don't know. More than a day, I'd guess." "Only that?" said Frodo. "It seems weeks. You must tell me all about it if we get the chance. Something hit me, didn't it? And I fell into darkness and foul dreams, and woke to find that waking was worse. Orcs were all round me. I think they had just been pouring some horrible burning drink down my throat. My head grew clear, but I was aching and weary. They stripped me of everything. And then 2 great brutes came and questioned me until I thought I should go mad, standing over me, gloating, fingering their knives. I shall never forget their claws and eyes." "You won't, if you talk about them, Mr. Frodo," said Sam. "And if we don't want to see them again, the sooner we get out of here, the better. Can you walk?" "Yes, I can walk," said Frodo, getting up slowly. "I am not hurt, Sam, only I feel very tired, and I have a pain here." He put his hand to the back of his neck above his left shoulder. He stood up, and it looked to Sam like he was clothed in flame. His naked skin was scarlet in the light of the lamp above. Twice he paced across the floor. "That's better," he said, his spirits rising a little. "I didn't dare to move when I was left alone, or one of the guards came, until the yelling and fighting began. The 2 big brutes, they quarreled over me, I think, over me and my things. I lay there terrified, and then all went deadly quiet, and that was worse." "Yes, they quarreled seemingly," said Sam. "There must have been a couple of 100 of the dirty creatures in the place. A bit of a tall order for Sam Gamgee, you might say. But they've done all the killing themselves. That's lucky, but it's not too long to make a song about, till we're out of here. Now, what's to be done? You can't go walking about the Black Land and not let your skin, Mr. Frodo." "They've taken everything, Sam," said Frodo. "Everything I had. Do you understand? Everything." He cowered on the floor again with bowed head, as if his own words brought home the fullness of the disaster, and despair overwhelmed him. "The quest has failed, Sam. Even if we get out of here, we can't escape. Only elves can escape away out of Middle-earth, far away over the sea. If even that is wide enough to keep the shadow out." "No, not everything, Mr. Frodo. And it hasn't failed, not yet. I took it, Mr. Frodo, begging your pardon, and I've kept it safe. It's round my neck now, and a terrible burden it is, too." Sam fumbled for the ring and chain. "But I suppose you must take it back." Now it had come to it, Sam felt reluctant to give up the ring and burden his master with it again. "You got it?" gasped Frodo. "You've got it here? Sam, you're a marvel!" Then quickly and strangely his voice changed. "Give it to me!" he cried, standing up, holding out a trembling hand. "Give it to me at once! You can't have it!" All right, Mr. Frodo," said Sam, rather startled. "Here it is." Slowly he drew out the ring out and passed the chain over his head. "But you're in the land of Mordor now, sir. And when you get out, you'll see the fiery mountain and all. You'll find the ring very dangerous now, and very hard to bear. If it's too hard of a job, I could share it with you, maybe." "No, no!" cried Frodo, snatching the ring and chain from Sam's hands. "No, you won't, you thief!" He panted, staring at Sam with eyes wide with fear and enmity. Then suddenly, clasping the ring in one clenched fist, he stood aghast. A mist seemed to clear from his eyes, and he passed his hand over his aching brow. The hideous vision had seemed so real to him. Half bemused as he was still with wound and fear, Sam had changed before his eyes into an orc again, leering and pawing at his treasure, a foul little creature with greedy eyes and slobbering mouth. But now the vision had passed. There was Sam kneeling before him, his face wrung with pain, as if he had been stabbed in the heart. Tears welled from his eyes. "Oh, Sam!" cried Frodo. "What have I said? What have I done? Forgive me after all you've done. It's the horrible power of the ring. I wish it had never been found. But don't mind me, Sam. I must carry the burden to the end. It can't be altered. You can't come between me and this doom." "That's all right, Mr. Frodo," said Sam, rubbing his sleeve across his eyes. "I understand. But I can still help, can't I? I've got to get you out of here at once, see. But first you must have some clothes and gear, and then some food. The clothes will be easiest part. As we're in Mordor, we best dress up Mordor fashion. And anyway, there's no choice. It'll have to be orc stuff for you, Mr. Frodo, I'm afraid. And for me too, if we go together. We'd best match. Now put this round you." Sam unclasped the grey cloak and cast it about Frodo's shoulders. Then, unslinging his pack, he laid it on the floor. He drew a sting from his sheath. Hardly a flicker was to be seen on the blade. "I was forgetting this, Mr. Frodo," he said. "No, they didn't get everything. You lend me sting, if you remember, and the lady's glass. I've got them both still, but lend them to me a little longer, Mr. Frodo. I must go and see what I can find. You stay here. Walk about a bit and ease your legs. I shan't be long. I shan't have to go far." "Take care, Sam," said Frodo. And be quick. There may be orcs still alive lurking in wait." "Well, I've got to chance it," said Sam. He stepped to the trap-door and slipped down the ladder. In a minute he reappeared. He threw a long knife onto the floor. "There's something that might be useful," he said. "He's dead, the one that whipped you. Broke his neck, it seems, in his hurry. Now, you draw up the ladder, if you can, Mr. Frodo, and don't you let it down till you hear me say the password. Elbereth I'll call, what the elves say. No orc would say that.